Welcome everybody to our Casual Comrades stream. We got two fantastic guests today that I'm going to introduce to you right now. Say hello, people.
Hello.
So we have Snapple and Cats. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, I'm but I used to have a YouTube channel that I'm not active on anymore. But I'm on Twitter a lot as Pitchy Spoonie. I'm black and queer and disabled, so I talk about that a lot as well as communism. Also, as you may have noticed, I have Tourette syndrome, which is a neurological condition that makes me make movements and noises that I can't control called tics. Sometimes even makes me say words and phrases that I really don't mean. If any of y'all have questions about that or are confused, uh, let me know. Um, but yeah, other than that, I'm just glad to be here and here um glad to talk about disability issues, especially as they relate to my blackness as well. And yeah,
Right
that's
on.
me.
And I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you for
It's
having me.
super cool. So Ashley, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, my name is Ashley, and I'm on Twitter at AshleyBBD. And my disability is schizophrenia. So I like to talk about mental health and the way that poverty in the United States works out for disabled people. Thank you.
Right
Thank you
on.
for having me.
It's so good to have you, Ashley. Yeah, well, I got a lot of friends with I got a couple of friends with schizophrenia, and I got a lot of friends with disabilities. But I'm basically here to learn from you people, from experience and knowledge. And we're gonna try and figure out how this crooked system that we have right now, this capitalism bullshit, is screwing you people up in particular, and what we can do about it as comrades together. So
Oh yeah.
take it away, good people. I'm all ears.
But
What do you find? What do you find, like, especially in your everyday life, that go like, oh, come on, this again?
Well, one thing I think is how
so
uh, capitalism reduces people to what they're worth economically. And that's tied into ableism, it seems like, because if you can't produce because you're disabled, then you have no worth to the society as a whole.
so yeah, yeah. But I do find it funny because a lot of people, when I say that I'm a communist and I'm disabled, try to say like, under communism, you would be considered a worthless eater or useless eater or
I've
whatever
heard
it
that
is.
too.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, what do you think I am now to the system we currently live in?
Yes,
Like, how
yes,
do
you're
you think society
absolutely.
really thinks of me? That, yeah, I'm definitely I'm someone who cannot like work um on any like consistent basis. Occasionally, but I know people who cannot like work like at all. Um, but I definitely can't work enough to support myself. And for that, I feel like the systems that be try to screw me over at every possible turn that they can. Yeah, when you asked that question, I was almost thinking like, where do I begin? Like, there's so much. Definitely, um, I don't know. Maybe one thing that comes to mind first for me is like the um like SSI and SSDI systems. For those of you who don't know, those are different types of disability benefits basically. I kind of hate that word, but yeah. Um, and that yeah, there are other programs that definitely screws over, but that's like one thing that I definitely wish more people knew about. Um, because like for me, I'm on SSI. I'm not allowed to save more than $2,000. I don't have marriage rights. That there's like so many things within that system that are basically just meant to um keep you poor and make sure you don't like have any resources basically, and that's if you can get on the program, which most people cannot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they the rules say you have to have under the $2,000 limit, and
Mm,
then if you earn some money, they penalize you. And the way that it works right now, I don't know how clear my brain is, but
mine is never either.
on SSI, you get a little bit of health care and a little bit of money. And then if you had a
Yay.
well-paying job, you have health care and a little bit of money. But between abject poverty and, say, a $20 an hour job, there's nothing in between. Have you experienced that?
Yeah, but yeah, it's a little bit hard for me because I don't really have the option of like getting a job that can support me in any
Yeah, me
way.
neither. Me
So
neither.
I don't, but I do. I have like, there's been times when I've considered like doing something to get me extra money, and it's always really scary because it's like, but what if I get too much and then I'm like cut off the system entirely? And then I'm like,
Yes,
Virginia, not just without this like extra like safety net of extra money, but I also lose like healthcare and stuff.
yes,
And
yes,
so if I ever want to like try to do anything that I think could be successful, like it has to be like so sure that I can do it, which is it never is. Because I'm giving up like any safety net as soon as I venture out into something like that. You know what I mean?
yes. It's all or nothing, and there's nothing in between.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
seems like you're not allowed to have a job. You're not allowed to save money. You're not allowed to a lot of stuff. It seems like
Yeah.
those laws, what they provide is it's a lot of don'ts and not a lot of do's.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah. But and um I don't know, it can get complicated because I think that where I run in fuck Virginia. Fuck off. Um where I run into some more like problems or disagreements, I guess, with some other disabled people is I think there's a kind of hierarchy within the disability community itself with like people who could potentially work without those limitations. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like people who
Oh,
really
yeah.
couldn't. I think a lot of disabled people see this, and I kind of don't like fully blame them and think we just need to integrate more disabled people into capitalism to get people off of these systems, like make more accommodations. I do think there should be more accommodations in the workplace.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I don't think we want a situation where we're just like um integrating as many people into capitalism as possible and like saying like screw everyone who can't do that. You know what I mean?
Well, I was somewhat radicalized by Twitter because there are too many people trying to crowdfund groceries. And in a
Yeah,
country like the United States,
yeah,
that's garbage. Nobody should have to crowdfund your
yeah.
groceries.
And you can't even. I mean, but you can crowdfund a little when you're on SSI.
Hmm.
But like say earlier, was it this year or last year? I forget.
Hey, I
But
gotta
I had
bow
to.
out for a minute. I'm sorry.
Don't worry about it.
Oh, that's okay.
Excuse. Okay, I'm sorry. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
It's okay. Um, I'll just continue with my point.
Yeah, absolutely.
But like earlier, I had some like cavities that needed to be filled. And even though I have dental insurance and health insurance, um, none of those could help me because with my Tourette's, I need to be put under to have a cavity filled. So I needed to pay for that out of pocket, and I needed to crowdfund, but I couldn't crowdfund myself
Wow.
because of my benefits because I couldn't own more than $2,000. And I think this whole thing costs, I forget, it was more than $2,000. It was like a few thousand.
Yeah.
Um, so what I needed to do was have my mom make the GoFundMe, and have the money go to her account and have her pay for the procedure. Um, because I wasn't allowed to do that. And if I didn't have anyone to do that for me, I would have like never gotten dental care. Um, yeah, I forgot where this started, but situations like that pop up when you um can't save.
Wow.
The
Wow. Yeah, I mean,
but
I'm glad that you found a work around it, but there shouldn't be a work around it.
exactly.
A problem that shouldn't be there in the first place, if you know what I mean.
Oh yeah, exactly. But healthcare, which I think includes dental care, it's ridiculous that they're separate. Um, which is actually my whole problem. But but that should be like a given that
Hmm.
everybody just has. But it shouldn't ever be something that people have to work to access.
Yeah, it's a human right, not a commodity. And it's so absurd,
Exactly.
that in many places it's about
But
how much money you have in your account or how powerful your insurance is and how graceful your insurance is because insurance is on top of that. Private insurances tend to try to screw up their customers for as much money as possible, right?
oh yeah, it's a total it's a total scam. But and yeah, it's really infuriating. I think it kind of goes back to what we were talking about before about like how capitalism sees disabled people as useless eaters, and therefore it does everything in its power um, to make sure we're not like taking up any resources or burdening the system. Um, yeah, so like if we do get anything, it's the bare minimum, and we give up a lot of like basic rights to get those things.
Yeah, it is
But
beyond the pale, I would say. Like the situation in the United States in many many ways,
yeah,
and but
I do think there's similar programs in Europe, but I'm like less qualified to, oh, excuse me. I'm less
yeah.
qualified to talk about those. I know in the UK they've had a lot of problems with people not being able to get on benefits at all, and like people like dying um while they waited for the system to say they're not fit to work.
Yeah, the
But
the problem in Europe in general is that we have like this fantastic public healthcare system, and it's being deteriorated over the years more and more by neoliberal
yeah,
governments.
but
So we have like a wonderful system in place that should work like a charm,
but
but they've been defunding,
yeah,
chipping away from it little by little with subsequent, neoliberal
but,
policies, different governments, and so on in different countries. So all in all, we feel like we're in a husk of a wonderful system that should work, but it doesn't because of lack of funding, and it sucks.
capitalism basically.
Right on.
But because like even though um Virginia, it's like technically free in a way, it still does like cost money, So there's still an interest that people will have to not spend that money because capitalism is all about that the concentrating wealth, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all about feeding those parasites in power. basically. Uh,
for sure.
yeah. It is. I think it caught my attention what something you said at the beginning. About the ableist mindset of capitalism. Your
Yes.
worth is as good as
the-
what you can the work you can do for the parasites.
Yeah. And something I've been thinking about lately too, because I've been um sort of exploring more and trying to uh how do I put this? But um just like sharpen my thoughts a bit around like black people's place in capitalism specifically, and like other people of color, um other indigenous people, but and like how that relates to disability specifically. And I really do think that like the system is kind of like angry at every disabled person um for like not being able to exploit them,
Yeah.
as much as it would like. And I think sort of it's that's also more targeted to black disabled people because we were meant to be slaves, and it's still trying to figure out how like it can either exploit us now through the prison system, which is where actually a lot of black disabled people go, um, which is not discussed enough. But or if it can exploit us, it's basically trying to kill us. Which I think you can see with the COVID crisis if you look at the people who are dying the most. We know it's black people, and we know it's also like um disabled people, but I think people rarely put that together and put it together that like black disabled people are like especially targeted um because they see those issues as separate when they're not.
Yeah. Yeah. I see what you mean.
How?
Yeah. I see what you mean. Like in a way, it seems like
Get it?
the things were in place in a way that when the virus came,
The,
it took away many of the people who were already in the
yeah,
disadvantage
but it
from the
was
standpoint of capitalism, right?
it was an excuse, I think, to do what they already kind of wanted to do. But because now like because they already have it. They already say like when black people are dying more because of the healthcare, they're like, oh, it's because like of lack of access, and they talk about all this stuff to make it seem like it's not purposeful. In fact, when you talk about disabled people in COVID, they're like, oh, well, they already had like pre-existing conditions um, that would make them vulnerable, and but we have to triage, which is a nice way of saying we're gonna specifically care for able people more because we value them more. But um, yeah, all of this together, I think that the system already doesn't really want black disabled people to be there. But and because like not only can it not exploit us, but like it sees us as a direct threat to the system because we challenge everything that it stands for.
Yeah.
And I think COVID just like allowed them to like have an excuse to take out a bunch of black disabled people without anyone um really taking a second glance.
Yeah, like executing evictions during a pandemic is like what the fuck, right?
Exactly. That too.
Like what the fuck. And
Yeah.
but ableism is it's a farce, and you can tell like when yeah, like a disabled person doesn't
But
get money into the system or whatever, wealth, I would say, not money, into the system, like an able person can do, from the working class, but
yeah.
a landlord doesn't either, and they're okay. So
Yeah.
what a
But
bullshit, excuse of a Ableism itself is not. It only works
The
for those in the
the
working class, right?
yeah, you can definitely like see through like but who is allowed to live without working and who isn't. That's because the capitalist class largely doesn't work either. Not because they can't, like me, but because they have other people to work for them.
Yeah, and it's considered
And
natural.
they're really
Nobody.
the
Yeah,
lazy people, but we prize that. But whereas someone like, excuse me,
no worries.
I don't have COVID, I promise. I just have allergies. Um, yeah, someone like me not working, well, that's a problem.
Yeah,
But
you should be making that wealth for the master. Whip cracks.
exactly. But that really is how fucking people see it though. Um and but sorry, my train of thought. Um but yeah, you can clearly see that the difference here isn't really who's working and who's not, but like who's supposed to be working and
Exactly.
why. No,
Exactly.
no,
Supposed to is a key. It's a key sentence over here in this argument.
yeah.
Definitely.
Ah, ah,
Definitely. So ableism is absolute bullshit. Like probably is also like racism and classism and the other
so
isms.
yeah.
Like if you
I
see
think
it
it's
from
all
from if you see it from an
connected.
intersectional lens, right? It's like they're all made up excuses to keep the power system the way it is, right?
But yeah, I think like each one of them like leads to an is intertwined with each other because all of this really goes back to how Europe wanted to colonize the world, but and exploit it for its resources
Yep.
and take advantage of other people, and it did that whatever it had to do to achieve that goal. So I think ultimately all of these problems today um are not like really like these separate things that are all just like randomly popping up, but they all come from that core. If you think about it, then like if you're a colonizer and you're looking to exploit uh foreign peoples and their land, like you have to be ableist because looking at it from that lens, sorry, looking at it from that lens, disabled people are not like useful to those ends. Um, and then you have to justify it somehow. But and so on. And you also have to justify like why you're trying to make all of these foreign peoples work for you and why you're trying to take all their stuff in the first place.
It's like the
Um,
narrative, right? The glue that puts it all together. Conveys a
exactly.
justification, to make all those horrible things.
Yeah. But that's something I think a lot of people have trouble understanding because a lot of the times and sometimes we're kind of forced to like excuse me sometimes hey I thought we're forced to think of all of these issues separately um or we discuss them all as like I don't know just like random bad ideas that people have for no reason, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
um and we don't really get to the core and realize but like these aren't just a bunch of like separate random things that are popping up everywhere or like people just like acting really irrationally even though there is an irrationality to it. um like this all comes from the same place and like
Yeah.
but I think you have to have like a material analysis to do that, and I think but something a lot of people miss is that you have to include um disabled people and especially like disabled people of color to do that material analysis. Girl,
Yeah, definitely.
please.
Like in your case, being a woman, being queer, being a person of color, having a
Yeah,
disability. There's a lot of that's a lot of intersections right there. So you
yeah,
know a
those
lot
aren't
about the
all.
struggle, right?
But yeah, I try to. Um,
Yeah,
sometimes
definitely.
I'm not always as studied as I would like. But yeah, I do think that gives me more of a perspective because even though sometimes I'm forced to talk about these issues as if they're separate, it's very like clear for me to see in a way that I don't think it is for other people. To see that they're not really separate. And I've like uh, had to learn and even like theorize myself, just because of my life experiences, um, to get to these ideas in a way that I don't know. I think other people just don't have to think about them in this way.
Yeah. So
That makes sense. Ah,
a group of good friends of mine have this song called well, that has a chorus that goes like this in Spanish, like en la calle día a día la práctica te da la teoría, like out in the street day by day practice gives you the theory, right? When you're boots on the ground, and I think in
but
movements like ours,
interesting.
in a way, like we need like half and half. We need the
Ah,
bookworms, the good people who have all the theory in their heads and they can work out,
ah,
the 1,000 feet tall perspective.
ah.
But we also have people with boots on the ground and the lived experience, to know what it is, in the
Oh
everyday,
yeah.
and the combination, of all
Historically, I
of
don't think
those.
those are like very separate either. Like if you look through leftist history, there's a lot of people who have like um experience in movements, and then they go write about uh their experience in movements, and then they go back to the movement. Um, yeah, I have a bit of a different perspective because like I really can't be involved that deeply in activism like that because of my disabilities.
Yeah.
Um, but I still think, oh, I don't know. I think even the like people who can be activists, who can be in these movements, especially, um, should be looking for and um, trying to get the opinions of people like me because I think ultimately the way that you strengthen your movement is to try to find the people who can see the faults in society and in the system that you can't. So like people with different experiences, people who do have experiences like being black, disabled, and queer, for instance, or other intersections. I'm certainly not like I don't want to say like I'm the most marginalized person ever because I'm definitely not.
It's not a
Um,
competition, definitely.
yeah, for sure. Um, but like you could look for someone with my identities who like for instance isn't like light skinned like I am or like doesn't live in the suburbs. um People in like third world countries like have an internationalist perspective. Look, I think all of that is important, um even for and especially like the people who cannot like directly participate in these movements. That doesn't mean that we're not like struggling with the system as well in our own way. Um, and it doesn't mean that our perspectives are not like valuable. Jeez.
If you ask me, for me, you're a very capable communicator
But
and educator and
thank you.
propagandist. So,
The,
from my point of view, you're doing a great job. To be honest, in
thank
that.
you. I try to do my best when I get the opportunity.
Yeah. Well,
um,
your best is pretty fucking
I
awesome.
appreciate that because
Respect.
but yeah, I don't always, nah, even though I definitely like think like logically that what I'm doing is all right. Sometimes I have my own internalized ableism, but so yeah, I appreciate that. Ah,
No, really, I've seen a
woo,
lot of streams of yours, and I see your tweets and your communications,
yeah,
and you're pretty damn based, basically.
thank
I mean,
you.
that's how it goes.
Oh,
So yeah, not everybody can be out in the street, but for people who have disabilities and have like hurdles to jump in this
mm,
absolute nonsensic world that we live in that gives us just obstacles on tops of
eh,
obstacles, you know, the way I see it, what you're doing is a great job. So kudos on that.
thank you so much.
Gotta give you
But
mad respect about that for real. It
yeah,
is one thing that I'd like to touch on this stream is the spoony concept,
yeah,
the spoons. Can you explain to our
yeah,
audience
yeah,
and to myself what are the spoons?
yeah, yeah. So for those of you who don't know me as well, uh, sorry, I'm trying to like hold my phone steady. It keeps like slipping out of my hand.
Don't worry about it.
But along with my Tourette's, I also have several other disabilities, including a chronic illness. And within the chronic illness community, we have this concept called spoons. I can't remember the name of the person who like originally came up with it right now, but y'all could probably look that up on your own time. But in fact, someone basically um, came up with a story to explain their lupus to their friend, and said, and like gave them like, I don't know, like 12 spoons or something to represent like the amount of activities that you can do in a day. But and basically like had them go through their day, like, what do you do in the morning? Oh, you got up and brushed your teeth? Well, that's a spoon. Now you have 11 spoons left for the rest of the day. Um, so yeah, everybody uses the concept somewhat differently as adapted to them, but it's basically a concept like for chronically ill and just like disabled people um, to explain the limitations that we might have about like how many activities we can do in a day rather than just saying like, because sometimes I can do the dishes and sometimes I can't, and sometimes I can only do the dishes if I um like, I don't know, don't shower. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's basically to explain that concept.
Yeah,
I hope that makes
like
sense.
you got like a few free slots for activities, and
Yep.
that's about it. And then you have to
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 done. I'm done for the day.
Yeah. Especially with my chronic illness, which by the way is ME for sure. The full name is myalgic encephalomyelitis.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
That's a
but
mouthful.
basically, yeah, you just call it ME for short.
Yeah.
Um, but basically one of the core symptoms is something people call it post-exertional malaise, or some other people call it post-exertional neuroimmune exhaustion.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it basically means that if you expend too much energy in any way that's like physical, also like mental, because your brain, I don't know if you noticed, takes up a bunch of energy in your body,
Mm-hmm.
um, then like basically a bunch of your symptoms will flare up and you get really sick. So I have like definite like limitations on like how much I can do in a day with my illness, and that's like one of the core symptoms. So um, that plus my Tourette. That's why
Yeah.
my Twitter is Twitchy Spoony.
Yeah. Well,
Get it?
thank you for the spoon, I must say. I'm so glad to spend it together with you.
But I'm glad to be able to do this. I love doing stuff like this. I love
Yeah.
educating people as much as I can.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And I think, one of the things that buggers me a little bit is this that we don't talk about this enough, to be honest. It's like
Yeah.
what the fuck? Stop role playing about the 19th
Mhm.
century people for a moment, and let's talk about the stuff
Right.
that matters, right?
Right. Even like I don't know, I find myself but I've basically accepted by now, since it's the most accessible format to me, that like my Twitter is how I'm like creating new theory. But basically I do feel like I've had to create maybe not entirely new, but somewhat new theory for myself just because a lot of the places that I look within leftist circles really don't have that. Um, and a lot of the disability community um, is very white. Disability is very white coded, but so a lot of them um, don't really represent me either. But I have found like other Black disabled people for sure, and those are like I don't know the people that I tend to like pay attention to the most and like cherish the most, I guess. But like yeah, in mainstream leftist spaces, it's very rare that like I really see all these things like discussed in a way that connects to me or like the I don't know. I find like if they are discussed, it's often like just like introductions to the topic, you know? Which is
Yeah,
fine. I do wish people would introduce themselves to the topic, but because like hardly anyone talks about it, it's like you're always introducing these new concepts and like I don't know. Sometimes you just want to go beyond the basics, I
yeah,
guess.
yeah,
Anyways.
yeah.
Ah,
Also,
oh,
given what you mentioned about the disabled community, it would be also worth, to make some efforts to radicalize the disabled community and
oh, yeah,
introduce more disabilities
yeah.
into the radical community. So
But
a little bit of
I
both.
actually think um it's really a shame how like ableist leftist spaces can be because I know they've pushed a lot of disabled people out. But
Yep.
I think like a lot of disabled people are really like natural comrades and like naturally inclined to leftist ideas. Um, it's just like hard for them to enter like these spaces and learn about it a lot of times because like they can be so hostile. But like I hardly know any disabled person who hasn't on their own like come up with the idea and like fantasize about a commune basically many times without even knowing what a commune is because I think there's like a more intuitive sense that you get that like everyone um has to take care of each other. Um so I do think like a lot of disabled people, obviously not all, but a lot of them like come to these ideas really naturally and they're just like not allowed to flourish or be sharpened or really be like pushed into action.
Yeah.
But geez.
Yeah, it's a good thing to take care of each other, but if you call it solidarity, people freak out.
Yeah, sort of. Or I guess that to be honest, a lot of leftists and communists really do internalize um a lot of capitalist ideas about production that they don't question because they don't really have to. Um, and they think like everybody in a commune would have to do a certain amount of work to be allowed in. Um, and there's a lot of leftists with very like eugenist kind of like ideas with regards to that because they still like prioritize like the worker,
Yeah.
or the people who can produce. Um, they still like haven't completely like thought those things through.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
even able-bodied people feel it when you're unemployed. It's like the workers
Yeah.
and the worker this and the worker that, and you're without a
Ah,
job for a long time, and you start feeling, this thing. So I can even
yeah,
imagine,
for
what it
sure.
feels like for a disabled person.
But there there are like all these ideas about like how you're supposed to be independent and how you're supposed to contribute that like I really think that we need to question a lot and question I know like but because like even in the best society I would probably like ideally I would like have caregivers and such
Mm-hmm.
and people see that as like you're not like being as independent as you should be without recognizing that we like all depend on each other and like we're all supposed to take care of each other.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
so I think we can really get in trouble if we don't like question our like priorities of like how much like work and productivity you can offer basically or
Mm-hmm.
like if we're looking at people with like as like how much can they offer me so rather than like how can we take care of everyone. Eh,
Yeah. Everyone,
woo,
not excluding
yeah.
anyone. Exactly.
Hmm,
Exactly.
hmm.
Now, how do
Yeah,
we go
definitely.
about fixing this shit? How do we go about, do you
Oh,
have any ideas worth trying?
that's a question. I don't know, but because I've been thinking about like, yeah, like where do we go from here? Because like ultimately, a lot of the problem is that like peop a lot of people really don't care about disabled people, to put it quite frankly.
Yeah.
Excuse me, and I'm not really sure how to fix that problem. But I do think like for those of us who do care, um, I think we have to uplift disabled people and put more power into disabled people's hands. No, with regards to this stuff, and we need to be but more adamant about getting people's needs met. Um, and pointing out where they're not getting met and how this interacts with like um the system as a whole basically. Um, because I really think there's a lack of understanding there that really needs to be fixed. Or like people think of disabled people as like a side issue that they can ignore, because it doesn't affect me.
Yeah.
And something I really think people need to get it into their heads is like you cannot, as a leftist, just fight for the issues that affect you and then stop there and not uplift anyone else because this is all connected.
Exactly.
Um, yeah, and our but everything. How do I explain this? A win for like the people who are most marginalized and screwed over by the system is also a win for you, even if it isn't directly, because we are like all in this together, even if the system wants us to think otherwise. So it's really actually important to think about issues and people that don't affect you directly, because otherwise we're going to be really divided. We're not going to understand any of these issues. But and we're not going to have a material analysis of the world that is actually accurate. The yeah, I think if people could understand that, we could fix a lot of issues. It's just hard to get people to understand that because everybody in a lot of different ways is still um but still tied to their own privileges
Yeah.
and still sides with that sometimes over the movement or a lot of the times. Um, so I don't know. I think maybe that's the core issue that we need to address. I'm not quite sure how to address it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
sorry,
see
that
what
was a roundabout, rambly answer that really wasn't an answer, but
it was an
those are the
answer.
thoughts
I
that
think
have
what you
been.
know, yeah, because when you remove what's in the way, you know, the lack of solidarity, the thing that
But
the thinking, the way of thinking of my problem is the
yeah,
problem, and somebody else's problem
the,
is not the problem,
the
is a way to solve it.
individualism.
Yeah, to introduce
Yeah,
more solidarity, more across the board,
the
right? For
yeah,
all lefty spaces.
exactly,
Yeah, I hear you. Like
exactly.
if you're
That's hard to achieve though, because again, people have like. But I think when we talk about privilege, like maybe a better way to express it, um, is like being an oppressor class and having like ties and interests related to that oppressor class. Um, I think maybe that's a better way to talk about it.
yeah,
Um, but and it's really hard to get people to go against those interests. But I think if we're really all going to move forward together, it needs to be together, and we need to figure out how to do that.
yeah. You need to be like a cis man worried about trans issues, and you have to
Yeah,
be worried about women's issues as well.
yeah,
And you have to be, if you're like a white person
but
who falls into the whiteness, whatever that concept is, you need to be worried also about the
yeah,
problems and the plights of people of color. And if you're
yeah,
able-bodied, you need to be worried and need to be working towards the interests of people with disabilities. It's
yeah. And
like
in
it
many
looks
ways,
like.
like working to abolish those systems wherever, even when they put you at the top.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like, but just because, like, it's like when um, we say, like, if you're white, like, you should be still working with people to abolish whiteness,
yep,
even though that benefits you.
yep,
It's really hard for people.
yep.
Um, and it's really uncomfortable, but I think we should all be willing to get more uncomfortable and to make more sacrifices in those areas where we're in an oppressor class. I think we should be um traitors to the to those
To our class, yeah.
alliances.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely,
and
definitely.
absolutely like work to destroy them, all those like hierarchies that get set up.
Yep, yep.
Um, it's important not to just think about how you're screwed over, but also where you're benefiting and where you're complicit, which
Yeah,
is really uncomfortable.
yeah.
That
And we need to get used for it to sting. You know, when I tell people I'm from Spain, and I talk to people in Latin America and go like, you're an imperialist piece of shit, and I was
yeah,
like, yeah, my country is an imperialist piece of shit, and it sucks, but it is what it
but
is. I hope me as a person,
yeah,
I'm helping you, and I can
it's
say
funny
fuck
listening
Spain
to
all
that
the way,
too,
right?
because like I'm clearly like not white at all, but I'm also like my ancestors also hail from Spain. They're like Spanish and like Basque.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that is
So
funny because it's like some of that in my ancestry as well, even though I don't really have the same relationship to
then
it.
ongi etorri then. Ongi etorri means welcome in Basque.
Oh, but uh, but I would love to learn that language one
Wow.
day. I have to say, like, but Spain, I'm kind of like, eh, you're like, I mean, Basque people can also be colonizers in some instances,
I guess so.
but they're much more like, I don't know, would they be considered indigenous? I think they would. Um, and they have like their movements to be like recognized as a people. Um, and I think that's super based. I would love to like go there one day and like learn more about the language and the culture and I don't
You're
know, it's so cool if they've been there for like thousands of years and
you're in
have
for
their
a
own.
treat. You're in for a treat if you want to learn Basque, because it's a mysterious language. You know that it's not, the roots are not
I
from
love it.
Latin or German or anything, or it's a mysterious origin language, and it's
I have
beautiful.
been wondering too, because I've been focusing on French for a long time because I'm trying to stop my ADHD from like trying to learn like 11 languages at once.
Mm-hmm.
And then after I'm um gonna learn more Spanish, but I do eventually one day want to see how I handle a language that has no relation to my own. Because like learning French, it does kind of feel like cheating a lot of the times because a lot of it is just like English words but a little different. Um, so but yeah, I just wonder like how I deal with something with like a completely different vocabulary and completely different like sentence structure.
It's a lot of
Um,
fun. It's a lot of fun for
and
for
it'd just be
life.
so cool to like reconnect with that as well. Because like even through um the construction of whiteness, a lot of like my family on that side lost a lot of their culture. Um, so I don't really know anything about Basque people, and I'm like super curious. Um, learn a little bit here and there, but not a lot. Nah. I'd really like um I mean obviously I'm more concerned about reconnecting with my African roots at the moment, but I would like to learn about that too. Eh,
Yeah,
sorry,
of
that was like
course.
a huge tangent.
It's a treat. It's a treat. It's a
Get it?
fantastic culture.
I was
I
just looking at the chat. Randy says I have some Basque ancestors too. Maybe we can go together.
I
Go learn about
There you
the
go.
culture
There you go.
when the pandemic is over, obviously.
Euskaldu nanai setarra nago, which means like I'm
But
Basque and I'm proud. Like
oh, that's so
the Basque
cool.
version of I'm Black and I'm Proud. That was it was created by Fermin Muguruza.
Nah,
Yeah, it
but
was.
I need to learn the language.
I know. I got to learn a little bit of Basque, but I think I have like a similar thing with you. You know, a little problem with focus. So I got to learn a little bit of Basque and I forgot it. And I got to learn a little bit of French and I
But
forgot it. I got to learn a little bit of Polish and I forgot it. I got to
if you
learn a little
ever
bit
want
of
to
Norwegian.
practice French, I'm always like looking for people to practice with. Because basically, all I want before I like move on to like another language is basically to just like feel like I'm conversational enough to like get around. Like
Yeah.
if I was in France, like maybe I don't need to speak it perfectly, but I want to be able to say that I speak it with confidence, you know? But like my ASL is terrible, but like I can communicate most ideas that I have
When I was 16, I
through
spoke like really
ASL.
good French,
So,
and then it
yeah,
faded away with by lack of practice. Je
mm,
presque tout oublié mon français.
yeah. Everybody tells me they forget, but I really want to get good enough too. Because I'm especially like interested in the like Francophone read the news from there, like as it is written, um, in French. Um, because I do think that's like a perk to like learning other languages is like being able to get news like, directly from a country instead of like waiting until it gets to your spheres or like have it translated to you and things get like lost in translation.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Translation is tough, and you tend to lose a lot of stuff. As someone who has practiced a lot of
get it.
translations, say minor translations
Mm.
from the place of the translator, you're almost all the time you're almost in a pickle because whatever you can
Yeah.
express very well in one language, you try and transpose it to the other, and you have to really paraphrase, and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
am I
There's so
betraying?
many like colloquial things too that like would be so hard to express because like some things that you say in language they have like a whole background to them, like there's a whole backstory to how we got here,
Yep.
and there's no way to like give someone that same cultural background knowledge in order to understand the phrase. Uh, uh,
Yeah. comes to mind. There's this expression called de perdidos al río in Spanish, which is literally
But
translated would be from lost to the river. It's like what? But it's when you give up, So whatever happens,
yeah,
let it happen.
yeah,
Is that expression?
that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, it's like once
But
we're lost, let's go to the river and see if we can
but I
find
guess
ourselves.
every time you translate that, you can't like put a whole explanation. Like
Right? Like how?
this
How?
is exactly what this word means. But oh, sometimes when I watch, like like when you watch like foreign movies and their subtitles, sometimes I almost wish I could get like two versions of the subtitles, where one is like but the regular translation, and the other one, or I guess interpretation in this case, and the other one is like a super direct translation of exactly what they're saying, just so I could like know all the little like things
I
that I'm
I would
missing and I could
foresee
look them up.
I would foresee a lot of pause button action there. Like, what's it saying? Wait, wait,
A
wait.
lot of what, yeah, right.
Pressing the pause button all the time.
But
Like,
yeah, no, but I would do that though. I don't know. I just have like a really like strong interest in like language and like all the ways that like people speak and interact with each other. So it'd be super fascinating um to learn stuff like that. I would totally nerd out and pause every 3 seconds and
I hear
look
you.
stuff up if you gave me that.
Yep. I mean,
But
there would be very long movies, but totally worth it.
oh, oh yeah. Oh yeah. And you can always like split them up into like 2, 3 days if you need, if you really need it. But maybe part of this is also like since I'm home during COVID and because of my chronic illness and everything, I just have way too much time on my hands. So I'm just like, and I'm like, because it's such a nerd that I'm just like, yes, give me language stuff to learn.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jeez. Sorry.
No worries. I feel like I totally should have caught up
Ah.
on something language wise or learning wise. Instead, I've been making music like a dork.
You're already. How many languages did you say like either speak now or like have spoken in the
Like
past?
I'm fluent in
Get
Spanish
it?
and English, but I have learned my share
Yes.
of Norwegian and Polish because I lived in Norway and Poland.
See
Uh,
though?
yeah, but
But
that was with years of life experience, because you go to places and you end up in
okay,
places and you have to
true.
kind of right.
But most people in the US speak one language for their whole lives and like never venture anywhere outside of that. They don't even learn um ASL, which I think like everybody that should learn, like even with your own within your own like country you can't like communicate with the deaf people or like
Yeah,
um
sign language, right?
then yeah um this American Sign Language for ASL. um yeah, I learned that too, but like but in the education system and like I don't know. It just totally fails you in that area. So like you're already ahead of most of the people in the US just for being fluent in like two languages.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
it's
Yeah,
always
I hear you.
infuriating when I like meet people from other countries and they're like, "Oh, sorry, my English is so bad," and they speak it perfectly, and also they speak like seven other languages, and I'm like sitting here just like been struggling with French for like a decade. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
and they're
Well,
like,
in
yeah, I've been speaking all these languages since I was like 5 years old.
I mean, in the case of sign language, for me, it feels like an egregious case. Like it
Yeah,
should be in every school all around the world. Like
right. But
Duh, right?
it's another thing too. It's like it would be beneficial for like people who are deaf or hard of hearing or people with auditory processing disorder. But I also think it would just be more convenient in general if everyone knew ASL because okay, you can do things like talk through windows. I remember going to like a deaf event at one point and it was super cold outside. And so for a little bit, we literally just stayed in our separate cars and like smoked through the windows with our heaters on because it's cold. And we could do that because we all knew ASL and or like from super long distances, you don't have to shout. You can just like sign bigger and not strain your voice. There's like places that are like super loud and like hardly anyone else can like hear themselves think. Fuck. So
Which
like
in a very parenthesis type of thing, if you're interested in weird like a very niche languages,
yeah,
there's this group of people of shepherds in the Canary
yeah,
Islands who whistle to each other.
I've heard okay, I've heard of several whistle languages. The one that I heard first, I think was in Greece.
Okay.
I forget where though, but those are super fascinating.
Right.
I don't, but as someone who struggled to whistle for most of my life, funny story, I actually learned to whistle because of my tics. Um, but it's just interesting to like try to imagine like a whole language. I would definitely struggle with that.
Yeah. I mean, quite the thing.
Eh,
But it's true, that for me, sign language should be a no-brainer. Like, of course, we go
yeah,
and as you said, it could go with language in general. You can have
eh,
like a written, verbal,
eh,
and sign. It could be
yeah.
like,
Although like sign language, um, it does it is like a whole separate thing from the spoken language of the area. Um, like ASL has its own grammar. Um, the closest grammar that I know of that has reminded me of ASL is like something like Chinese.
hmm
Um, and so yeah, it is very different. Um, yeah, I definitely think eh, like why wouldn't we all know that? It just but seems baffling to me that people wouldn't want to. And sometimes even too, I'm like, aren't we all gonna like lose our our hearing a lot when we're older
yeah,
anyways? And it would be like that would be much easier if we all already knew how to communicate. I mean, there's so many reasons to learn it, and like not very many not to. I mean, it can be inaccessible. Hey, for some people, but it's just I
yeah,
don't know. I think it should be in every school. I know. Okay, I know that part of the reason has been that it's been like suppressed. But I don't know. I just feel like we need to get over that time period. Canada.
yeah.
Oh, someone said ASL is closer to French. Um, I think it's closer to French Sign Language, but maybe not like the French language itself. I do want to learn French Sign Language too, though. That's also something I'm planning to do next. Look at me, I'm saying I'm trying to like focus on one language, and then I'm like, oh, but I want to learn this, and I want to learn this.
But then again, you can
Um,
consider it part of the package, I guess. You know, sign with the
eh,
rest of the language. Like we have written language and we have
yeah,
spoken language. Why
I
not sign
do.
as well as part of the same
But
package, right?
I do feel like because like a lot of the resources, but they call it LSF over there. Um, a lot of the resources to learn that are in French. So I feel like once my French is good enough, um, then I'll be better at learning uh, French Sign Language. Um, just
Yeah.
I'll have to like translate. from my English brain to French and then translate that to LSF.
Yeah,
Um,
that's an awful
but
part
yeah,
of being to be in a like in a foreign
yeah,
language when you're translating all the time because it's exhausting.
yeah, yeah.
It's
Someone
exhausting.
said I don't know or anywhere in my city to learn ASL. There are resources online. I don't remember all of them, but I know a really good one is Bill Vickers has like a website and a YouTube channel. Um, so if you search up his name, it's Bill Vickers.
How do you
That's
spell it?
uh, well, Bill is Bill, and then
Mm-hmm.
Vickers is Vicars. But so if you look him up, he has um a full course online, um, and like a YouTube channel where he's constantly putting out like new vocabulary and stuff. So that's definitely a good resource if you want to start learning. Um, I would definitely, if you have the option, try to find like some deaf people to communicate with and practice with. Who don't mind that sort of thing. But if not, I mean, I think it's good to learn like as much as you can rather than learn nothing. Um, so I wouldn't be discouraged if like you don't have the perfect resources. If you learn a little bit, that's like better than most people, I think.
In Spain, we have a singer songwriter whose name is Rosalén,
Yeah,
who always brings a sign language translator to
yeah.
her shows.
Oh, nice. I wish more people did that. I feel like that should also be a given, is like we should also have like interpreters for everything
Yeah,
everywhere.
yeah.
Um, like
Uh,
interpreting and captions, especially because like not all deaf people know ASL either, but also not all of them know English. So I think like um we should really have both for most things.
yeah, at least
But
until the educational system catches up, and
woo!
we're looking at you, educational system.
Yeah, but I think like once the educational system catches up, like that would be better too because we'd have more people who like can interpret it and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Um, and captions, I especially like get frustrated with this when it's like big corporations who can definitely like afford to pay people to do that. Um, but it's such an afterthought when it really should be like a main, um, just part of like setting up an event, you know. But hmm, yeah, that's another part of ableism we can discuss too as well as like how the accessibility gets treated like an afterthought or like something extra.
yeah,
Um, nah, rather than just like how we do things, you know?
yeah. Kind of
Ah,
feel it feels like a lot of this stuff is as you said, considered as an
yeah,
afterthought. You know, everything regarding disabilities and whatnot. And it shouldn't,
yeah.
and it shouldn't.
That's sort of why I really, really don't like the phrase special needs. Nah, because it very much feels like that thing where it's like, um, to get your needs met is special or it's extra. Um, or like we think your needs are not like as valid as anyone else, just because you have to get them met in the same way, even though we all have the same needs. Um, no, because you have to get them met in a different way from other people. Um, that's not as what's the word? I'm like entirely losing my train of thought. Sorry. Um,
Don't worry about it.
yeah, it's just another way that you're not as valued as other people in capitalism. Ah, hmm,
Yeah, here it's like a
ah,
most of these systems don't care about leaving people out. As long as
oh,
they got their customers, and
yeah.
that's problematic because
Woo.
leaving people out is not an option.
Yeah,
We
especially because like sometimes accessibility can cost more.
Yeah,
Nah, so that's obviously like a huge incentive for companies to just ignore it, even though it would benefit. Usually, when places are more accessible, it benefits everybody,
Yep.
not just disabled people,
Yep.
even though we should be doing it for disabled people, even if it just benefits us. But it benefits everybody, but like, um, we can't do it a lot of the time because, it would cost too much. Um, and with capitalism, it's just seen as, I don't know, I guess unreasonable. Um,
Yeah, because
eh,
of the profit motive, basically. You know,
mhm.
profit motive
We're,
and relations of power between classes and whatnot, right?
yeah, even with like basic things that like people think of with accessibility, like ramps, like a lot of times you can't even get that, um, because there's a lot of complaints about how like, oh, the small businesses can't afford that, but we expect these small businesses to um, meet like every other safety regulation for everyone else.
Yeah.
But somehow even that like little bit of accessibility is not seen as essential as those other things. Where it's like, nah, I don't think people sometimes realize that like able people need accessibility too, because part of disability is socially constructed.
Yep.
Um, like nah, even though the stairs are inaccessible, uh, that is a way as an abled person that the person who's made the stairs has made the world accessible to you.
Yeah.
Because without the stairs, like imagine if you like went to a society where like everyone could fly and you couldn't. Suddenly you'd be disabled, and it wouldn't be because of your body necessarily, though bodies can also disable you. Um, but it would be because of the environment. So I think we need to start thinking of accessibility as something like everybody needs, um, and start recognizing when people are making the world accessible for able people as well, and ask why we can't do that for disabled people.
Yeah. It's their fault for not having wings. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. Um,
Our grocery store is perfectly perched, and that pole over there is not my fault that you don't have
yeah,
wings.
but that's really how people think, though. That's considered the social model of disability too. For anyone who's wondering, I should mention that
Mm.
the idea that you can be disabled, not just by your body, but also by society and the way the environment is constructed around you.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's like a huge part of disability rights, is recognizing how like disabled people are purposely kept out because of the way that the environment is constructed, and
Yeah.
not always just because of our bodies. I mean, I think it is important not to say like disability is totally societally constructed, because I definitely have disabilities that can't really be accommodated to the point where I could do everything that I wanted to do, even in a perfect society.
Yeah.
Um, but it definitely, it's a huge concept that I think more people should understand.
Yeah, it's like once you tear down the forest and make a city, come on, make it for everybody. Yeah,
Eh,
not that you went there. Come
eh,
on, chop chop. What's the
but
problem here?
yes,
People, catch up.
but like, um, I had a thought and I completely lost it. But
It'll
but
come
yeah,
back.
I
Don't worry.
definitely think in society should be made accessible to the maximum amount of people
Yeah,
possible.
yeah,
Meh. And
and
it's not like always simple or easy, but like wherever we can make things more accessible, we should.
yeah, and not stop
And
and not stop because they're cheaper in that way.
mm-hmm. Yeah,
We
because
have the
too often it's
technology,
the
we have the
opposite.
means to make it happen. So let's make it happen right now.
But Also, like along with this, is a lot of the reasons that we do have things that are accessible now are because of the ADA. Um, but the ADA has been like totally, um, I guess, like undermined at every turn. Um, and it wasn't that like perfect in the first place. So I do think we need to like push. Um, excuse me, my stomach is like not liking me today. Um,
Oops.
but it's still not done. Anyways, I think we really need to push to keep the accessibility we have and like push further for
Yep.
more like rights for people, um, but both for the ADA and for laws specifically for schools, like the 504 Act and IDEA. Those are both laws that pertain to accommodations at schools. And ultimately, what we should be pushing for is that like accessibility is a given and not like some special thing or like an exception that we make for people.
Yeah.
As far as
Accessibility.
possible, the
Accessibility by
world,
default, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
but as far as possible, the the world should be already be accessible for the most people from the get-go. Um, and where we do have to make exceptions, that should be more of a rarity, you know?
Mm-hmm.
The where like something really couldn't be set up beforehand. Um, but we should always like accessibility should be the default and
Yeah.
not something we see as extra. Gee.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Like it
Woo!
links a little bit to the way that our societies are structured. Like it's very
Mm-hmm.
visible in the cities. Like there's a lot of what we could call hostile architecture, right? Like
Yeah.
cars take priority to pedestrians in the design of the city itself, in
Mm-hmm.
its very layout. Not to say the more let's say
Get it.
specific designs, but it's best to guarantee the access to the parking lot than to the people who are
The,
in the sidewalk, or you see a lot of that stuff in
yeah.
those cities, and there's an underlying ideology for that. And
I remember like back like um visiting downtown Sacramento, um before all this COVID stuff started happening. um I took like my wheelchair out for like one of the first times that I was using it. The like if anyone has been to downtown Sacramento, there's like a bunch of um like walk areas that are like made of like really bumpy wood
yeah,
to roll over, and so like the whole time you're just like riding in your wheelchair just like like um just like vibrating. And
mm-hmm.
then you have to like it's so hard sometimes to find the curb cut um to get off the sidewalk, so that's hard to navigate. And my navigation skills aren't really that great in the first place, but then you have to worry about like which routes can you take, because sometimes you want to like pull something up on Google Maps to
Yeah,
go somewhere, but then you find out, oh, that route isn't accessible at all.
yeah,
Um, so now you have to go a different way. It was hard to find a bathroom. Um, yeah, when I eventually did find a bathroom, it was super sketchy. They had this like fuck almost like mini like elevator like thing to like lower you down to the place where the bathrooms were.
yeah,
But because there was like a bunch of stairs, and it was one of the few places that even had that accessibility. And then when I got to the bathroom, luckily I'm ambulatory, but I had to like leave my wheelchair out of the stall, which I don't like doing obviously, because it wouldn't fit. They didn't have an accessible stall. um in that bathroom. But so yeah, I could definitely speak to how like inaccessible things can be. Even like going into the shops, there's often like not enough space for your wheelchair. Um, all sorts of different things like that. And that's just like wheelchair accessibility. That's not even considering like even with regards to my own disabilities, like stuff to do with like sensory processing disorder, like how loud spaces are and like the absence of quiet spaces. But or like even like navigation, like um lack of navigational cues to navigate spaces. I mean, I could go on. Um, yeah, the environment is definitely set up to be really, really hostile to you um, when you have any sort of disability. Please. Ah,
Yeah,
ah,
I hear you. It is very difficult design,
oh,
and you can kind of blame it into you know most of these
ah,
things were built before there was some kind of consciousness about it, but the
yeah.
fact that they
But
haven't
even
bothered
then,
to adapt
you,
after the fact, it was like, come on, step up, people, come on.
yeah. I'm not even sure that like I totally like buy into the time argument because like nah, disabled people have are always existed.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
um there's just like times when so many of us were institutionalized that you didn't really see us in society. Um but even then it's like why are you putting us all in institutions? Um the and then there's the fact like no, yeah, a lot of these buildings are really old and stuff, but I think a lot of them like could be made accessible. And as a society, we really just don't prioritize making those renovations.
Yeah,
Um, or like we think that because they're old, um, there would be a sort of like sacredness that is destroyed by renovating them in that way.
yeah.
Um, but I really don't think that that should come in between like someone's right to access public space in the way that other people do, you know?
And from the point of view of the governments, it's also like a very good thing, to spend that budget into making
But,
buildings accessible, because you're giving jobs to the people who are going to make the
but
adaptation work, and you're going to include
yeah, you,
many members of your
uh,
community into those spaces. So it's a win-win-win, to invest some budget into
if
those.
only we had a government that like actually prioritized enriching the community
Yeah.
rather than just
That's also
money.
true. We're talking about theoretical, responsible
Mhm.
governments, not 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 the
Yeah, not the US
not
for
the
sure,
corrupt.
or
Yeah,
even most
definitely the corrupt, greedy,
most
power
governments.
hungry governments that
But
we have right now. That's true.
oh yeah, for sure.
That's very
But
true. Which it comes back to
yeah,
politics. It always does. That's
and capitalism.
yeah, of course, of
Um,
course.
but yeah, you can see it to different degrees in all governments. I've found. Um, even like um more like I don't know, liberal to social democrat. Um,
Yeah, call
to
them
even like some
responsible.
leftist governments, they
Yeah.
have like but laws because sometimes I've looked at like where can I go that's not the U.S. I don't like it here. But like a lot of them have laws that basically prohibit disabled people from immigrating there even or like especially if you can't work then a lot of times you can't make it to that country if you can't like find a job in there.
Yeah.
Um so yeah, it really does all come down to money and like how the whole world is like wrapped up. stuck in this like capitalist, like colonialist system, unfortunately. Huh.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. I hear you. It is a systemic problem, no matter what government, and it's definitely linked to capitalism, or as I like to
Yay.
call it, crapitalism.
That's good.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear
I
you.
can't wait until that this is a tangent, but I can't wait until I'm like good enough in like French or like any other language to make puns and jokes like that.
To be honest, in my case, I can't help myself. I make puns or they explode in my head, and
Funny. But
I'm on permanent dad joke mode, which is can be very annoying sometimes, to be honest.
no, that's how I can be as well. But I also know it would take me so long to be able to express that in any other language. Although to be fair, but ex when I do obtain that skill, it'll be like great. You can be really annoying in two languages now
I mean,
rather than just one.
from someone who's come to the other side of fluency, I can tell you
But
that it's just practice, practice, practice. So
this is true.
yeah, keep it up. You'll do just
It'll
fine.
be like great. You can annoy two groups of people
Yes,
now,
that's our goal. That joke
right?
gang. Let's make it
No,
happen.
that's the ultimate communist agenda right there. Is just like to be able to make bad dad jokes to the most amount of people possible.
Yeah,
That's
somebody
what we
should clip
spread,
that.
right? Like let's spread the dad jokes,
We,
right?
we, we should we should clip that and send it to some right wing grifter so they can make a straw man of the left.
Oh no. But some of them would fall for it too.
Definitely.
Not all, but like some of them are really uh they'll believe anything about the left.
Yeah, basically that's a good rule of thumb, I would say.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Except that, like what we actually believe, like we want like the best for all people and like liberation and stuff. They will believe that stuff if you tell them that.
Yeah,
But if you tell them the left agenda is like literally anything else, um, then yeah, they'll believe that.
definitely. They're so willing to strawman us. It's like so exhausting sometimes. But at the same time, it's like, it's so easy
Yeah,
because they're so wrong. Like, there you go, strawman,
yeah,
done, done, done.
yeah. I really like that. But I honestly don't think like most of them are in good faith. But if I'm honest, like, I think they believe a lot of the things that they say, but I think also they know, that like what they're saying is kind of BS. But but
Yeah, I mean,
they
with
want to
these
keep,
with these shitty political
yeah.
movements, I would always say, like, I would like to always distinguish between the ones in charge, the grifters, the ones who are really,
Mm,
pushing a bad agenda,
Canada.
and the ones who are like the victims, the ones who play along and believe they're bullshit and they know no better. And it's like, yeah,
I
well,
don't know if I would categorize them as victims, to be honest. I'm a little bit more, I don't know. I've gotten really like cynical about that stuff, kind of
mm-hmm,
more, especially because like I can see like how many of them, like, yeah, they'll hurt in some ways because of it. Yeah, I think they know that, and I think they're doing it like again because um they know that someone else who they don't like will hurt more.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
So I don't
I
know.
think
I think
they're
some
kind
of
of
them are legitimately fooled, but like not many, especially at like this point in time. If they're like an adult, um, like a fully like formed adult,
yeah,
and they have like access to the internet, which not everyone does, but if you're an adult, you have access to the internet, um, and you're like alive right now. I think you have like all of the resources
yeah,
that you need to be able to like learn anything that you want to learn. Um, and a lot of the ignorance is very willful if they're ignorant at all, which many of them are
yeah.
not. But
I
and
I
sometimes I think we assume that they are a little too quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and it's true that it's very difficult, or it should be very difficult to be ignorant, not on purpose. Well, I shouldn't,
Yeah. Uh,
underestimate the
Maybe
systems of
not.
fear and denial. All the
Yeah, but
psychological things that make these people be like cornered in a teeny tiny,
yeah.
uh, very
Maybe you wouldn't
restrictive.
learn about everything. I
Yeah.
just think like there's some basic things that you should be able to figure out. Because like I don't know, for me, maybe I have like a particular perspective on this because I grew up in a conservative family and was like raised conservative and whatnot. So I'm like very familiar with all these ideas and how they're propagated
Mm-hmm.
and how they work. Um, where was I going with this thought? Uh,
It was
my brain like completely blanked out.
about the mindset of right wingers and how you
Oh
have
yeah,
this
yeah.
unique perspective about him.
Oh, I remember what I was gonna say. Thank you.
No props.
Um, but because of my life experience as someone who is black and disabled and queer,
Yep.
um, I was sort of forced to, um, confront those ideas, more so than other people. And then once I was ready to confront those ideas, I found eventually, I mean, it took me a while, but I found most of the information that I needed, and I'm still learning. I don't know everything.
Nobody does.
But once I was open to it, like
Yeah.
all the information was there. Maybe it came a little more intuitively to me since I have like my identities. Um, so maybe it's more intuitive for me than other people for sure. Um, but it's not like I had more resources than other people. In fact, I had less. Um, a lot of this time that I have been learning about leftism and growing in my radicalism, I have not been able um to read a book. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean?
Yeah.
I've not been able to access the same books as many other people do.
Yep.
There were times I couldn't even read articles. Um, and I was still learning about this stuff. But
Yeah.
so I think like nah, I do that because I like value my own life, and I think if you value the lives of like other people around you, um, and the world around you, then like you have all the resources that you need to at least learn the basics. Ah,
That's a very good message to send out there. Like there is no excuse to get better.
yeah,
People, step
but
up.
yeah, definitely. Like at least like try to like learn and improve yourself. Like nah, honestly, for like the people who can't like say figure out that like capitalism is bad, like something to me that's like really basic. I'm like, but it's so obvious, and like you don't have to like look very far to
Yeah.
me to like realize something like that, or like the fact that like everyone deserves housing and food and water and electricity. Like these are conclusions that we should all be able to come to, even if we don't have to be like sociological experts to recognize these basic things. But so to me, if you don't, I'm like, what are you doing? Like there's clearly something in you if you haven't like learned about these basic things where like you just like don't value oppress people in a intentional way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least not in an intentional way. Like not on purpose maybe, but still,
Oh,
feels
I
like
mean
a
on
stretch.
purpose. Sorry.
Yeah?
Like I think I think the ignorance is willful, and it's because they don't care and they don't like intend
Mhm.
to learn how to care.
But would you throw a
You
little
know?
bit of fear in there, like ignorance because being afraid of knowing some truth, some knowing some, some things that may
I
be
mean, I think
inconvenient?
there's like some amount of ego in there that stops people from progressing further because I think meh, even though people have these really ugly sides to them, uh, even then, they generally want to think of themselves as basically good people. Um, so I do think like people are afraid of like realizing how wrong they are because there's that ego of like, no, I couldn't be like that racist because like I'm basically a good person.
Yeah.
I just don't think that those lazy black people should like expect not to be killed by the police. But like, of course, like you have to have police, and like they make up all these justifications, but they're like, but I'm not that bad. Um,
They're kind of
so
running
like,
away from the conclusion. No, 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 no.
yeah, they want to like that they want to follow their material interests, but they don't want anyone to make them feel bad about it. And if they looked up this information, then they would probably feel kind of bad. Um, nah, so I definitely um I think that there's like ego there and like some ways in which like white guilt is really not like productive because people's instinct is often to like run away from that discomfort. Um, so yeah, yeah, in some ways. Ah,
Yeah, I think there's a little
but
bit of that ego thing too. That's true.
yeah, I, but that I do again like find myself being like more cynical about that stuff these days. But
How
which
so?
is funny because I was raised like
Uh
the
huh.
opposite way.
Uh huh.
Um, to think that like everybody sort of has good intentions,
Yeah.
and like you sort of take that for granted.
Yeah.
Um, so it's been a long journey of recognizing like, oh, a lot of people really don't have good intentions, and it's not like they're ignorant or like you could educate them out of
Yeah.
their ideas because they don't want
Yeah.
to do
As you
good
said
things.
before, they don't care.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And um I don't think that there's like some sort of surefire way to like make people care about other people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think but if you can't find it in yourself to, care about your fellow human beings, and think that they're like deserving of like basic respect and dignity and the resources that they need to live, um, then like yeah, I don't think there's like any amount of like education that will fix that like basic attitude.
Yeah. How do you
Um,
fix lack of empathy, right? How do you fix that?
yeah, I don't even think it's lack of empathy, or at least not how I define it, which is like
Mm-hmm.
feeling the emotions that the other people feel around you.
Yeah.
Um, because I've known people who don't have that and they're like fine, like they still care about people
Uh huh.
even if they can't like feel their feelings. Um, I think it's more like a basic belief that like other people or like certain groups of people are like not as important as you are, um, or like don't deserve the things that like it's a basic like lack of respect for other people
Yeah, like some
that
kind of
like
exacerbated
I don't know.
narcissism, kind of.
Nah, uh, I wouldn't even say that because like nah. Again, I know people with like things like NPD, for narcissistic personality disorder, who still care about other people.
Mm-hmm.
I but I think if anything, it's like a product of our society because we're not as incentivized to care about other people. To
Say
make
the
like, cause,
neoliberal individualism, then.
but yeah, like
Mm-hmm.
if you think about most of human history, like we've survived because of our cooperation.
Yeah.
Um,
And
and
these people are stuck in
individualism
competition
forces us
mode,
to
right?
go, yeah, with everything against that.
Yeah.
Um, so I think in order for like those people to change who just like can't find it in themselves to do that right now, I think like the material conditions have to change because for most of them who live like that, there's no consequences for thinking that way. In fact, it's easier to think that way. It
Yeah.
benefits them. They have a better life thinking that way. And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
not how society should be. I don't think it's like put anything to do.
Yeah. The systems in
It's not
place,
even
the
really
rewards.
anything to do with like feelings. Like the feelings are just a secondary result of the conditions that we're under.
Yeah.
Um, but it starts before that, I think. Canada. Woo!
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you. I hear you. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a system that
yeah.
rewards being
Bah,
selfish, individualistic, and competitive with others. So
exactly.
if you're shitty to others,
Yeah.
it's just it's just the way it is.
Woo!
No
Yeah.
biggie, right? And
Yeah, it reminds me of I always say that these systems are basic they work how abuse does, but like on a larger scale. But it's like a cycle, a
yeah,
continuing cycle that but keeps producing. You can look at it as like oppressors and marginalized people, but it's also like abusers and abuse victims, really. Um, and I think people abuse when they're incentivized and conditioned to abuse. Um, and I think unfortunately our society does that a lot. So, but in a lot of ways, we're all caught up in that in one way or another. Um, so that, yeah, I think those like hierarchies, um, those need to change. There needs to be like we need to have a society, but that where like you have to care about other people, and that's
yeah.
just like how it is.
And it's kind of like culturally we assume it as the abusers and as the
Yeah.
abused. Like that's the way things are, and that's the way things are gonna be forever.
Oh yeah. Yeah, like many people um who like have grown up in abusive households, sometimes um it sort of stunts your imagination where you can't like imagine anything else because things have always been this way.
Yeah,
Um because you've never experienced anything else. But like there are healthier ways of being. Um it's just like that whole, situation needs to change. But I think it can change and we can fuck imagine more for ourselves. It's just that like so many of us don't.
yeah.
And for a lot of people who belong in a lot of those oppressor classes, they don't need to.
So it
Eh,
kind of follows that that is the responsible thing to do to promote those other ways of being, those other ways of living, those other ways of existence, right?
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh yeah. That I think if like the yeah, if you're in those oppressor classes, like I mean, it's good to center marginalized people, um, for sure, and also like again, it comes back to like you have to be traitors to these oppressive systems that like you've been a part of and like really work to destroy them. Yeah, so that like the cycle that cycle stops, you know? You do your best to like change your own behavior,
Yeah.
um, and make sure as far as like you're in control that those systems but and that like way of interacting, that way of treating other people, like it has to stop with you and you're responsible for that. Um, and we all have to take that on, hey as a society.
Yeah.
Um, and all like take a responsibility for like when um we have been complicit in these systems. Yeah.
I think it was Buenaventura Durruti who said we carry a new world in our hearts.
Mm,
And, I think for us to make it happen,
yeah.
we need to really be open about it and say, yo, there's a better mode, a better way to exist in this shit world so we can make it into a better world and to a better place all overall. Of course,
Yeah.
there are many, many facets to this. Like,
Okay.
there are many ways to break it down into different categories, right? Like the part that tears down the old system, but the
Mm-hmm.
part that builds the new systems as well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there are so many aspects to it, but and
But
it can be a little bit overwhelming. But the way I see it is like there's also so many of us that we can do
mm-hmm.
all that kind of stuff at the same
Yeah.
time.
Yay. Yeah, I really see those things as connected.
Yeah,
Sometimes we do get like way too focused on like just uh tearing things down, but I think in order um because humans can't have like no mode of operation with the world, right? I think if you're trying to stop an unhealthy like behavior or like way of operating, or in this case like an entire system, you have to replace it with something healthy. That means you have to like know what like the healthy behavior set of behaviors or systems are. um Maybe not completely, but I do think like you have to be able to imagine something better for yourself in order to really tear these systems down, because otherwise we're all going to be um like a lot of people don't know another way that the world should be. So if you just like take away these systems, they're going to build things up the same way again, the way that they know how to to do that. um I think like you have to be very intentional um with like saying like what you do want in the world
yeah,
and like what should be possible. um and like always, yeah,
yeah,
imagine more for yourself, for other people. But but I think we should be imagining things like utopias, like what would a utopia be like, and
yeah.
then like build something as close to that as possible. Maybe we won't get to that right away, for sure, but like we should have goals.
Yeah, even more so in times like these, that are like very culturally oppressive. Like
Mm-hmm.
neoliberalism sets itself as the only mode of existence.
Yeah,
Imagination
yeah, we have
is a
fascism trying
revolutionary
to
act, right?
gain a hold.
Yeah,
But here in the US, um, yeah, definitely. I do think that we are getting to a point not to fearmonger. Hey, fuck off. But like, I mean, climate change is right around. I mean, it's not even around our doorstep. It's here.
yep, it's
That
here.
and
Come on,
people are already suffering because of it. Um, we need to be doing this stuff as much as we can, like now.
yep. We need this to happen yesterday. So chop chop, good
Yeah,
people.
yeah, no kidding. But capitalism should have never gotten this far.
Nope. we
you
let it go
know?
too far. It should have stopped in the
Woo!
70s, to be honest. If you watch it like from a
Yeah,
historical
or even
perspective,
before. Like
yeah.
there's so many times where like it looked like it was falling down and it just kind of managed to like
I mean,
crawl
the
back from
hegemony
the
of the
brink of
United
death
States,
somehow.
the hegemony of the United States, it sprouts after World War II and all the spoils, of the Nazi wars and
Mm.
Operation Paperclip and whatnot, right? But that would have been also a very good moment for capitalism to stop. Actually,
Yeah. Although these protests we've been seeing is like the largest movement that the US has ever seen and it's global.
yep,
So I really do have like a lot of hope that excuse me that
no
we can
problems.
beat these systems and we can stop fascism.
Hmm.
Um I just think I don't know. But everyone should be doing as much as they can right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um we
I'm
need like all
seven
hands
million
on
percent with
deck.
you. Yeah,
Uh yeah, and but it should have stopped way before this, but like, it hasn't and this is the situation we're in. So we all need to take responsibility for as much as like we can do and do everything that we can to stop it. And like but for these movements, um, I think criticism is actually a really important part of these movements, um, to like keep ourselves on the right path. Um, and I think we really need to keep a sharp analysis of everything that is happening right now. But as hard as that is,
yeah,
um, and like do like what you're doing right now and like get a better analysis of like things like ableism that have like historically been really ignored or erased. Eh, um, I think doing stuff like that, theorizing about new things, especially like the internet, which is also like not theorized about enough.
yeah.
Um, all of that stuff we need to be doing right now. Hmm.
So I think we should, if you don't mind, I would invite you for us to pick each
Eh,
other's brains on all of these subjects in later streams. If you're
yeah,
cool
this
with it,
was great.
like
Thanks
we pick a
so much for
one
having
very
me on.
specific thing and we try to advance on it. We can bring more people on
Yeah,
as well.
I would love to do that. Yeah, especially with like the other people because I definitely but don't think that I'm really like uh the sharpest theorist on this issue or like not even like um maybe the person who needs to be listened to most. I think there are definitely like some really great types of people out there with like really great analyses and valuable like life experiences. I'd love to like
Yeah, and the
find more of those
juxtaposition of all of our
people and all get
perspectives.
together.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. All different sorts of people from all different like walks of life making me theory that make me so excited.
Yeah, look at that. Aranok just volunteered, and I'll be super happy to have Aranok
Nice.
on because Aranok is also based as fuck. So and a
But
great comrade, great person. So we need to do
type
more of
but
these. We need to do more of
yeah,
these. We've been
that'd be
going on
so
for a
cool.
couple of hours, so I think we're gonna call it for tonight.
Yeah,
But
thanks again.
if you wanna say
But,
something else before we wrap it up, or
uh, I'm trying to think like what's a good message
I
to
think the
leave people
last
on.
call to
Maybe.
action you made it was fantastic. To be honest, it was awesome.
Thank you. I just want to repeat the phrase because I like this historical leftist phrase a lot that I think to me is really anti-ableist and really like sums up a lot of my philosophy around ableism, which is put from each according to their ability, to each according to their need. I love that phrase so much.
Word.
Maybe I'll just like leave it there at the end as the nice
Word.
philosophy. It's so good.
Word. So let's, good people,
Woo!
let's follow Snapple and Cats on Twitter. It's at Twitchy Spoonie,
Yeah.
and
But
it was a great conversation. Let's see who we can raid right now on Twitch. And I'm
nice.
gonna stop the video for YouTube. Thank you so
Good.
much for coming. And we're first of many. First of many. That's
Nice.
let me be absolutely clear.
But
First of many. We're gonna hang out a lot.
oh yeah.